How you doing? My name's Steve Bush. Thank you, Lee and Ray, for hosting the telethon. White Rose Community Television is trying to raise some funds to fill in a budget gap, and anything that you can do to help us, we really appreciate. Um, I've been with White Rose Community Television for about 6 years, and I want to introduce you to a good friend of mine, Bryan Wade. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Steve, good. Thank you, Sue, for inviting me. My name is Bryan Wade. I'm a native of Harrisburg originally, but I sort of cut my teeth in York for over 22 years. Former educator here in the area, raised my family here, and York was the genesis for me creating a television series that eventually expanded and seen around the United States entitled Worlds Apart. So I'm appreciative that you thought enough to ask me to come back and to talk about it. I'm appreciative of this station because it provided, which was called YCAT then, provided World
That was your community access television.
Right.
So we're still access television.
Right.
It's just we've changed the branding so that it's more reflective of your county, because it started out as a city. It reached in the cable system in the city,
Right.
but as the cable system expanded, we expanded into
Right.
York County, added another channel. You know, I remember the first time I met you, it was in Princess Street. Your mom had a church across the street.
That's exactly, you have a good, exactly.
And you came over to
exactly.
see me?
Exactly.
And,
yep,
and we sat and chat, and we chatted about civil rights.
Exactly.
We chatted about power structure.
Right, right.
But
Exactly.
You've always were concerned about those kinds of things, haven't you?
Right. I've always had a heart for that. Part of the context was my, I guess, religious experiences as you sort of contextualized with my mother. It's interesting you remember that. She was on Princess Street.
Yeah,
Church
yeah.
right
Well,
on Princess
she was an important part of the community because many times people feel isolated. They live in neighborhoods, and if you don't have that basis of an oasis of a church to give some context and meaning.
Right, right.
Your mom was famous down there.
Okay. She's transitioned on, you know, in terms of passing away, but of course she provided a basis for me in terms of, you know, service per se and serving a community. But growing up in the 60s, which was a very volatile time in the history of America when you look at the whole transition of moving from Jim Crow into the civil rights period.
Do you know there's a whole generation of folks that don't know anything about that?
Wow. Well, I know one of the things I tried to do with Worlds Apart was to sort of keep that out there. And in another way, as a teacher, you know, I taught, one of the things I taught was history. But that's interesting. I think that history can be used always as a constructive context in terms of moving forward. Not that you want to sort of be mired in your past, but to understand how that past shapes everything you are currently and how you move forward. So I think
public access television gave you a chance to begin saying those things?
well, yes, having that kind of forum, having that kind of opportunity. Initially, prior to that, I had no specific aspirations to utilize media, although I understood how media was underutilized in dealing with critical issues. I think that in general, media can sensationalize issues that need maybe some tempering, some constructive dialogue around. And race in America, as you well know, and racism has been such a volatile topic to deal with. And really what inspired me to do that was really two people, the Reverend Frederick Massey, who's now in Virginia, but also a famed sociologist named Andrew Hacker. He had written a book called Two Nations Separate and Unequal, and came to Penn State, York. I don't know if you remember.
I was there.
Oh, okay, okay,
I remember that.
okay. There you
Andrew
go.
Hacker. I mean, he's famous.
Okay, all right, very good. And
You know, it was crowded out there that
yeah,
day.
it was packed.
Yeah.
It was packed. And that was the same time, around the same time that Bill Clinton created that initiative on race, and he started it back in.
He's our first black president. You know.
Oh, don't start that.
I watch his political shows. You know.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. But Andrew Hacker, in his conclusion, said that, you know, the community needed to sustain a constructive dialogue about these issues. It's quite controversial back then in terms of some of his contentions, but I took that to heart and I said, wow. And I knew that, you know, we needed an ongoing dialogue around that issue. So what I decided to do, and I talked to a few people, and I don't think they took me seriously, but within a couple of weeks, I had put together an 8-page proposal. I had met, at the time I was attending York College of Pennsylvania, go Spartans, and even though I wear a Stanford cap all the time around, and they said,
well, but, you kept right on going, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But eventually met with several professors about topics that I wanted to deal with, and within a period of months, as a result of becoming a member, of volunteering, and I think volunteerism is very important in any community in terms of what you give to a community. But I was able to cut my teeth in terms of how to operate cameras and control rooms and all that type of thing. And then eventually it maturated into starting the program, and the response was amazing, amazing in terms of the professors' responses that came on. I did a 4-part series that looked very holistically about the history of race, and you'll see some of those clips too. Matter of fact, I brought some clips.
Do you want to watch one now?
Yeah, sure. If they can cue up one of those clips.
Cliff, can you run a clip? It's hard to say. Cliff, can you run a clip?
Yeah, that is a.
Racism, as I've mentioned other places, is historical. It's not an absolute fact insofar as we talk about documents and so forth. Racism is a cultural concept, and it has roots historically. And one of the places we can find those roots in American history very clearly is, of course, in the institution of slavery, and the way slavery has been, and race have been so entwined in the development of the United States and of its subsequent years since independence. My focus will be primarily to note the way slavery and racism played a role in the evolution of the Constitution of the United States, and how these very strong forces were involved in precipitating the American Civil War.
I remember Phil from your college. He ran for Congress.
Yeah, he did. He sure did. Yep, Dr. Philip Avillo. He was really responsible for the intro that I used, and I said, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Worlds Apart." Worlds Apart is a program that examines the historic, scientific, cultural, and economic factors. And that was a direct quote from him, and I used that. So
cool.
Phil was very supportive of the program, Dr. Avillo, and several of the professors who you'll see on this program were very responsible. But I think, to some extent, people that saw those initial programs were surprised in terms of the level of scholarship and rigor, and probably in some ways were caught off guard by, where does Bryan get this kind of background to pull something like this together? Mm-hmm. Not knowing that I had spent two tours of duty in the United States Navy and the Army, where I had lived all over the world, and had vast experiences, dealing with the different types of people. Studied biblical studies at Lancaster Bible College, York College, but then my own research work in a lot of different areas. So I think a lot of my life experiences provided the context for me being able to do what I did.
Mm-hmm. So Worlds Apart grew into a program that reached much beyond White Rose Community Television, or YCAT.
Exactly. Matter of fact, at the apex of the program, Worlds Apart potentially reached over 25 million viewers, because it was primarily seen in various cable systems, and that's including the community access stations. But we were able to, matter of fact, within 9 months, Worlds of Program from its time at YCAT was on commercial television. It went to WGCB and some of the other outlets, but and now it went really even beyond that. To a lot of the tours that I had developed, college tours, where I had probably visited over 25 or 30 different universities, such as Stanford, Harvard, Morehouse. I partnered with PCN. Mike Nixon was responsible for pulling that together. But he's
a volunteer.
Yeah, exactly. Mike has always been about, and I can appreciate some of Mike's political views too, in terms of.
Well, we don't talk about that.
Oh, okay, all right. But
Can we see
Mike
another
is
clip?
Yeah, sure. Mike's a very engaging person, though.
Yeah, all it is. It's not about his character. It's just his political views.
I didn't say that, Mike.
Hey, Cliff, can we see another clip of Worlds Apart?
Your question was about why we can't get better, not at 1% a year, but on a broad basis. Why we can't get to doing the best that's possible for kids generally.
The question is more on why aren't we advancing as much as we should?
Exactly.
Correct.
On a broad scale.
Correct.
Okay?
On a broad
Now,
scale.
I think we've heard in this discussion that it's not a technical issue. Folks around this panel recognize that we have the answers. People have also said in a whole bunch of ways that it's about will. I mean, all the stories folks have said about their own success and about what's necessary for kids to do well, they've said it's about will. So if we want to do better on a broad scale, it's about political will. We have not decided as a country, we've not been able to decide as a country collectively that we want to do as well as we can. We've decided our political decisions have led us to 2 Americas, 2 Pennsylvanias, 2 Philadelphias. So we've got to decide that we're going to come together to make it 1 America, 1 Pennsylvania, 1 metropolitan Philadelphia. That's hard. That requires coalitions. It requires tremendous empathy. It requires understanding that teachers' unions are sometimes part of the problem, but they must become part of the solution.
Well, that's a topic that's germane today, isn't it?
Oh, it still is. It really is. That was the first college tour at Drexel University, and we partnered with PCN, and that was broadcast statewide. And so that was part of the strategic growth of Worlds Apart, the ability to be able to partner with network television, you know, on a state and regional level. So that all those strategic kinds of things were responsible for Worlds Apart's maturation and its growth. Yep.
Yeah, I met him one time.
Yeah, Dr. Steven Herzenberg. Yep, I know him. He's a graduate of MIT. He has a PhD in
But there's a
economics.
connection to York, too, isn't it, to Tom Wolfe?
Yes, yes, definitely. Yep, they both went to the same school together.
Well, maybe you can help White Rose Community Television by giving Tom a call and asking for a contribution.
You know what? Somehow I knew you were going to say that.
He's a great guy.
Oh, yeah, he is. Oh, I could tell you, Tom, matter of fact, let me be candid. Tom, or Dr. Wolfe, was one of the primary corporate sponsors, not only for me, but for Worlds Apart. And
So it's his fault that you're a success, right?
well, I have to say it's more than just his fault.
Okay.
You have people like Dr. Donald Gogniak, who was the chancellor for Penn State University. You have people like Dr. Bud Reedy at Stillmeadow Church of the Nazarene. So I have a lot of deep and long-lasting friendships and relationships with people here in York County. And I'll be very candid, as I go around the United States, people will say, because they have this impression of York County, because as you well know, Worlds Apart was right in the middle of, you know, unfortunately, the trials that went on regarding the death of, you know, Lilibet Allen, you know, and their perspective of York was, boy, how in the world did you ever create a program like that in York, Pennsylvania? And I said, well, it's one thing to speak ill of a place you've never been to, and I think any community has its issues historically when we look at race relations or ethnic relations. But the beautiful thing I think about America, we have the opportunity in terms of the constant shifts, what they call ethnic demographic shifts, to be more understanding of other people. And that was one of the reasons that I created Worlds Apart. You know, the topic suggests worlds being apart, but the premise of the program was to bring worlds together through understanding and dialogue. And I think that's what resonated with so many people about this program, because you don't find, and I'm not bragging, but you just don't find many programs that are produced on a weekly basis that are dealing very structurally with issues such as race. It's a very complex issue. Ultimately, it's not that complex, but you know, it's just about how you treat people and treating people the way you don't want to be treated. And you've worked long in this area, so I don't need to tell you.
No, it's ironic that race is still an issue. I understood the purpose of the 1960s Voter Rights Act because of the poll taxes and the other kinds of things that were occurring mostly in the South at the time, but there was voter suppression throughout the United States.
That's correct.
And I thought we kind of fixed that, but there is a need to be ever vigilant on disenfranchising folk on a lot of different topics, whether it's jobs or education or public accommodation and housing. But the current legislation for voter ID in Pennsylvania, I never thought I'd live to see the voter suppression efforts so organized, structured, and we rely on the courts to balance things out. And people were so confused about going to the polls because of the voter ID laws, and they can't get the things that they need to vote, which is something that they've done for most of their lives.
And I would say that's where stations like this can provide that public service, to have these kinds of discussions where you could bring in people who understand the complexity, the complex nature of, I guess, some of the political agendas around, you know, this voter ID type of thing.
It's neutral. It's neutral. You know, shouldn't everybody have an ID? So it's neutral. I know.
Well, they've been blatant about coming about, you know, well, we got this voter ID thing done. You know, I mean, some elements of various political parties have been very blatant about, you know, why they're doing what they're doing. But
Well, one of the things that we've done at White Rose Community Television as part of what we consider our mission is the NAACP had a voter ID information session where
Right.
PennDOT folk and Department of State folk came down. The mayor hosted
Outstanding.
a
Outstanding.
voter ID seminar
Outstanding.
at Community Progress
Outstanding.
Council, and we covered that.
Good.
The Senate Democrats have a television program that they create in Harrisburg on voter ID legislation and gave us a copy, and we've aired that.
Great,
There was a
great.
press conference where the county commissioners and some other folks were at, and we recorded that and aired that. And the ironic thing about that is that very few people have an opportunity to show up at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday morning for a press conference.
Right.
But they can see the repeat
Exactly,
on White Rose
exactly.
Community Television, and that's what we try to do
The
for
public
you.
service. And that's one reason I would strongly encourage people, when you have these kinds of public service types of initiatives where you're trying to inform the community, you're investing in keeping your community informed. And with media through the FCC, I think, were you up in Harrisburg when the FCC came and did their trials?
I testified.
Yes, okay,
You
that's right. I
remember
was
that?
there, yes.
They took me in the little back
yeah.
room, you know.
Right.
And, oh, it was strange.
Right.
Apparently, the FCC commissioners are a big deal. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they are. And I missed an opportunity because I was there, and they had asked me, so,
Well,
would you want to speak?
you came up to the microphone.
Yeah,
I remember.
Yeah, but I didn't get a chance to speak. I should have.
See, I was on the list.
Yeah, right. And they called me back. Matter of fact, they called me from Washington, and we did have some tertiary discussions later. But it was not. But getting back to the point, that's why I think it's vital, with the way media is being monopolized now. You know, the larger conglomerations, to have this kind of a voice and to be able to provide this kind of information. It's important that people understand the importance of communications and information. And to be able to have that, it's a valuable asset. And I would strongly encourage, you know, if it's $5, $10, or whatever it is, do something. Matter of fact, come in and volunteer. You know, you just never know, you know, how, call in now and pledge. The number on the screen,
843-7722.
And I know I've called several of my friends around the United States. Matter of fact, I even put my appearance on Facebook
Did you?
telling people to tune in, you know,
Okay.
so.
Well, you know, we stream.
Yeah, I know, that's why.
And
Exactly,
not only
that's
do we
right.
stream on the internet, but we recently beta tested, and I think it's working. I know last night Cliff was playing with it. But you can watch WRCT channel 16 and channel 18 on your smartphone, your
Oh,
iPad.
man, wow, that's great.
You no longer have to have a computer. You can use whatever telecommunication device. We're trying to keep White Rose Community Television as technically relevant as
Yes,
we can.
I'm talking about compared to when I first came here to where you're at, y'all have done a wonderful job. I mean, an outstanding job. You want to see another clip?
Yeah, let's watch another clip.
Yeah, watch another clip.
All right. Hey, Cliff.
So the most important part is to not link genes together without any evidence of that. So we don't link genes for intelligence with genes for color, because there's no credible scientific reason or evidence that does that. And so that's the most important thing. So we can dispel right off the bat this notion that there is a superior set of genes for one group versus another. And I think that's the point to take home.
That was my good friend, Dr. Mark Schneider. One of the things that I explored on Worlds Apart was the notion of myths and stereotypes, what you call the social construction of race versus the biological reality that there's no such thing as race. There's really only one race or species of people. And
Well,
on that-
DNA is beginning to prove
Right,
that.
of course.
Going all the way back to the mother in Africa.
Yeah, I got you. So with Dr. Schneider, he was basically able, through his expertise in genetics and microbiology, to talk about there's no relationship between the color of a person's skin and the level of intelligence. Yeah, of course, that's been propagandized and put out there. Historically, they call it pseudoscientific back then, but now with the advances in microbiology and our knowledge about genetics, we were able to conclusively dispel that. So I didn't have to be malicious. I just knew, well, let's look at the science. Let's look at the research behind that. So that was another component of what Worlds Apart explored. How do we basically dismantle or deconstruct myths and stereotypes? And that was a very structured approach through genetics to talk about there's no relationship between the color of a person's skin and this dynamic of intelligence. And we even got into what is intelligence. And then I got to the whole discussion around the issue of education. What are we actually measuring when we have these quote-unquote IQ tests? Dr. Schneider was able to say what we really know on a scale from 0 to 10 about the issue of intelligence is really 0. So when we say we're measuring for intelligence, we're not really measuring intelligence. It's innate. We're measuring about what one knows about its environment outside, you know. So if you have people who have more exposure to information, doesn't it seem reasonably likely that they're probably going to do better on a test?
Well, and it's funny because when you were talking about stereotypes, it's important to allow folk to own their own beliefs when you begin to have discussions about differences. I know that when we talk to religious folk, they can't challenge hard-felt beliefs. I recall having a conversation with someone about sexual orientation one time, that the differences are more than just race. The differences,
Sure.
They call them isms, you know,
Right,
racisms,
sexism,
yeah. And the long-held, deeply held beliefs about homosexuality sometimes it creates a barrier about having a discussion about whether or not a gay person can have a job, for example, in a school because of the stereotypes that are associated with it. But the things that I've learned was that it's very important to recognize and to allow a person, an individual, to own and value their beliefs while we talk about behaviors.
Right, and that's that broader issue of diversity, although my program was more specialized in looking at race, but you're exactly right in terms of stereotypes can run across a broad continuum in terms of, you know, socialization. So that's a very valid point that you make. But
so you were mentioning Stanford. What's that up?
well, Stanford has always been my childhood dream to attend Stanford.
Now, where is that at?
Stanford's in Palo Alto, California. Matter of fact, one of the gentlemen that's here is from Palo Alto, California, in the studio, and we had a chance to talk. I've lived in California twice.
Who?
I forget. Is it how you pronounce his name? Say your name again, sir.
Rudy.
Rudy's from Palo Alto, California.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Rudy?
So he saw the Stanford cap when I walked in here, and he
Okay.
said, "What do you know about Stanford?" So we had a brief discussion about Stanford. But that was a childhood dream of mine to attend Stanford ever since I was 13, and it was based on, I don't know if you remember Jim Plunkett or not. He was a quarterback at Stanford, won the first Heisman Trophy. His experience was he grew up in poverty. Both of his parents were blind. I sort of saw myself. And the guidance counselor said, "Brian, where do you want to go to school?" You know, after he asked me, I said Stanford. After I saw Jim Plunkett, and that year he won the Heisman Trophy, and he went to the Rose Bowl and everything, I said, that's where I want to go. And I didn't realize that, but I had also applied for a fellowship to Stanford back in 2006 as a result of talking to some professors you may know, and we're getting ready to see a clip. I went to Stanford and did a series on cultural competency in healthcare, and it was underwritten by Pinnacle Health in Harrisburg. Cool. I had a chance to take one of my former students from Hannah Penn, because my experience was I didn't have a lot of those experiences. I think it's very important in male mentorship that we provide opportunities for children to see the world outside of their own experiences. I took one of my former students out to Stanford. He did a lot of the photography and things. It was a wonderful experience. He's in college now. And I hope that maybe that experience sort of in some ways had an impact on his life. But I think it's important that we be mindful of not only trying to procure whatever we think we need, but to look back and reach back. And I've always been very consistent about that, but based on my own experiences. So that's my affinity to Stanford. I've been.
Before we watch that clip, you said two things that were kind of interesting.
What's that?
One is the reaching out and being a mentor, even if it's briefly to someone.
Right.
And then that the challenge was to say that your neighborhood is a little larger than the 5 blocks that you live in.
Exactly.
We do that.
Right.
We do that here because we give an opportunity for those students to share their ideas and to communicate with others that can have an interaction beyond their neighborhood.
Right.
You want to see this clip?
Yeah, see, this last clip, Save the Best for Last, Stanford University.
It's amazing that people don't know the history anymore. I'm teaching Stanford freshmen, and a lot of them are from around the world, and they really don't have much context or history about the salience of race as an issue in the United States.
Products of their environment within the educational system.
Sure, exactly. And so I actually did something which I'd be interested in asking you whether you would agree with this as an educational strategy. But so I'm teaching about end-of-life issues and death, and I had the students read a chapter from a quite wonderful book by an African-American English professor at Duke named Carla Holloway. And it's called it's called Passed On African American Mourning Stories, and it in graphic detail talks about, and this is one of the ways in which I was interested in health disparities. It's how to deal with, how to help, and I work closely with an African American physician colleague on this, how to deal with issues of how to improve care of the dying in a community, a population where people have had quite horrendous experiences with the medical system.
So we're back. That was my experience.
So why don't you tell everybody where you work, because it looked like an interesting setting.
Yeah, that was Stanford University. That's right in the quad area, right in the center, on Palm Drive, matter of fact. Stanford's over 8,000 acres. I mean, it's
Ivy League, right?
Well, it's comparable. They call it the Harvard of the West.
Okay.
But yeah, that was right in the middle of the campus, right outside of an area called Memorial Chapel, which has a beautiful mural in the front of the church. I mean, I've never seen a university, and I've been to several, that picturesque and that beautiful. I mean, it's just a wonderful place. It's about 30 miles south of San Francisco and 30 miles north of San Jose, along the El Camino Real, right really in the heart of the Silicon Valley. So it's a beautiful place. I mean, I've lived in California twice, so I've had a chance to go there several times, and just a beautiful experience. So it was surreal for me to some extent to be able to go back and to do a series at Stanford. As a matter of fact, I partnered with the Pinnacle Health people, but also Still Middle Church of the Nazarene played a very vital role in providing.
Do you know
support.
they provide a program on Channel 16 each week?
I knew that they had some presence. I wasn't sure because I've been going from New York for a while now. But I know.
I bet they've been on the air 15 years.
Okay, yeah. But Dr. Bud Reedy has done a wonderful job. I know they have a presence back in the city because that's where they began, and then they went out to the Still Middle area of York County.
Well, they have a beautiful church,
right?
And they started an inner city program right beside Good Stool.
Exactly. So they've always had that heart. That's the mission statement of the Church of the Nazarene. Really, they come out of the Wesleyan tradition. But I have to say that I'll always be appreciative of Dr. Bud Reedy and the Still Middle family for the part that they played in the maturation of Worlds Apart. So I know there's this kind of perspective that, whites don't particularly care for people of color, and I understand our history here, but I can tell you it's not good to categorize or generalize any group, because I think there are positive and negatives that can be conveyed in any group, but I'm mindful of the friendships that I've made, and I still have those lasting friendships. So, matter of fact, we're probably in the planning stages of starting another television series.
Well, that's great. I hope you give White Rose Community Television a chance to help in some way.
This will be the anchor as far as, if I can make that happen and, bring funds this way, I'd really love to make that partnership happen.
Thank you very much for coming back and sharing your experiences with us.
I appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me. I didn't know that the telethon was going on, but I hope to come back every year you have one.
Well,
And
all right, Cliff, write that down. He's coming back next year.
If I'm at Stanford, I'll come back. Doesn't matter. No.
Skype in. You can Skype in.
Oh, yeah, from Stanford. Yeah, that'd be
there
great.
you go.
No, but thank you so much for the opportunity. And again, those of you who are listening, $5, $10, or whatever, I say that having appropriate means and consistent means of programming and information is very vital and important. So, do what you can and take part, not only just send your money, but play a part in being a volunteer here at the station. So thank you so much, and thank you for all that you're doing here at the station. Oh, okay. Thank you for all that you're doing at the station. Contribute, give. Sometimes I'm more concerned about the dialogue than I am looking at the camera.
And we've had a great dialogue.
Yeah, we sure have to. Okay, but thank you so much, and it's nice to be back in York. Keep us in your prayers, and I'll do the same for this station. Thank you so much.
Let's go back to Lee and Ray.